Assalamualaikum everyone. My name is NORANISAH binti ISSAH. I am from group BA246 3B. First of all, how are you? We hope everyone is doing well and take good care of yourself, especially during this pandemic. So today, our group will be presenting on Region 6, which is Northern Africa and Southwestern Asia. Before we get started with the presentation, I would like to point out the subtopic that we will be hearing today. As a brief, there are 7 subtopics in this region, which are Introduction, Climate, Northern Africa and Southwestern Asia, Environmental Problem, Cultural and Political History within a Wider World, Organization in Northern Africa and Southwestern Asia, Water Politics, and lastly, Sub-Region. If you have the textbook, you may want to refer to page 324 until page 376. This is the world map. The red arrow indicates the location of Northern Africa and Southwestern Asia at the world map. Next, this is the closure map of entire region, Northern Africa and Southwestern Asia. As an additional information, there are 7 countries under Northern Africa, which are Algeria, Egypt, Libya, Morocco, Sudan, Tunisia, and Western Sahara, whereby there are approximately 19 countries under Southwestern Asia, which are Armenia, Azerbaijan, Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, Palestine, Yemen, and many more. The boundaries of Northern Africa and Southwestern Asia are primarily coastline, with the line drawn in the south through Sahara along country boundaries. Mountain range mark the northern and eastern limits of Turkey and Iran. Sudan is included in the region because of its strong link with Egypt along the Nile River Valley. This world region incorporates north of Sahara and the Middle East. As our additional information, Middle East is an ethnocentric which describes land by the location relative to Europe. Rather than this Eurocentric term, Middle East, the more global and culturally sensitive term, Southwestern Asia, will be used in this presentation. Today, this region is one of the most influential as well as one of the most politically contentious world region. It is the cradle of 3 Western religions, which is Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. It also a major source of world oil. The common conflict that we might familiar with is the establishment of the country of Israel as a homeland for Jews, which occurred early in 1948, despite the opposition from Arab countries. Next is the climate of Northern Africa and Southwestern Asia. Alongside culture and politics, the natural environment of Northern Africa and Southwestern Asia are basic to the region's geographic distinctness and internal diversity. Hot, dry plain contrast with snow-capped mountains, range, and well-watered river valley. There are 3 major types of climatic environment in this region: dry arid, semi-arid, and continental. First is dry arid climate, whereby the evaporation is greater than precipitation. It also called the desert climate. The typically bold, rocky, or sandy surfaces in the desert climate hold little moisture and evaporate the little rainfall that they receive. The temperature can be as high as 58 Celsius or 136 Fahrenheit and as low as -1 Celsius. World highest recorded shade temperature, 58 Celsius, is in Libya. Libya recorded only 0.86 mm of rainfall annually. Sky at night are clear as there is no presence of cloud. The lack of cloud cover makes the night cool or cold. Freeze or snow is also possible in the winter. Not many population are available in this area, and most of them live in nomad way. Secondly is semi-arid climate or steppe climate. This climate at this region receives precipitation below potential evapotranspiration but hot, but not as low as a dry arid climate. The dry, grassy plain often occur in temperature climate which lie between the tropic and polar region. The mean annual temperature is between 18 Celsius or 0 Celsius in the coldest month. It just receives twice the amount of rain in desert region, which is 20 inches per year. Small part of northern Africa was covered by this climate. Lastly, continental climate. This climate often have a significant annual variation in temperature. In this region, the continental climate have a large range between the maximum and minimum monthly temperature. The temperatures are very cold in winter and hot in summer and a little rainfall. The average temperature is between 0 Celsius until 10 Celsius. Region of the land that have continental climate is Turkey, Iran. The mountain of Turkey and Iran force the air to rise, in turn causing rain and snow. The winter snowfall provide meltwater that feed the Tigris Euphrates river system in spring.
Assalamualaikum, I'm NURUL FARZANA binti ISMAIL. I will talk about two subtopics in this region. The first one is 3.0, environmental problem, and 4.0, culture and political history within a wider world. In 3.0, we'll talk about salinization, oil pollution, and desertification. Let's see. Ecosystems in arid regions are particularly fragile in response to humans' activity as they are easily destroyed and do not recover quickly. As this region population rapidly grows, new industries and cities are built in sensitive arid environments, and higher living standards raise the demand for water. Irrigation farming in arid areas requires good management to prevent the high rates of evaporation from drawing salts to the surface soil, which reduce or destroy crop productivity. This process is known as salinization. Under careful management, maintaining good drains allows water to flush the salt downward. Adding too much water waterlogs the soil and concentrates salts at the surface. In ancient irrigation scheme, 60% of the land in Tigris European river lowlands become unstable because of poor management. For example, the Persian Gulf salinity in 2010 was 47% higher than it was in 1980. The oil industry is a major polluter throughout the world, and the concentrations of productions and distribution centers in Persian Gulf area pollutes the atmosphere and water of areas around oil well, surface sea pitch, and where unwanted gases are flared off. Leakage pollute the water near ocean terminals. Particles in the atmosphere cause fog that create or worsen respiratory problems. Even before the Gulf War in 1991, the Persian Gulf had lost most of its plants and animals' life as a result of pollution since initial oil production began in early 90s. At the end of the Gulf War, the retreating Iraqis set oil well on fire, adding carbon gases and particles to the atmosphere, but the particles fell on desert sand. They also released a huge oil slick, damaging the plants and animals' life, but it has less impact than it would have if the Persian Gulf had not already been heavily polluted. Desertification is the conversion of non-desert land into desert. It is one of the major environmental issues Northern Africa and Southwest Asia has. Climate change is the result of desertifications as temperature increased due to global warming, the soil moisture decreased due to evaporations. As a result, plants die, which caused no trees or vegetated lands to form. This is why grasslands often border deserts. Around 48.6% of the land area in the Marrakesh, 28.6% in the Nile Valley and the Horn of Africa, 16.5% in the North Africa, and 9% in the Arabian Peninsula is endangered on account of desertifications. Countries that facing the greatest dangers are Libya, Egypt, and Jordan. So we have come to the fourth subtopic of this region, which is culture and political history within a wider world. In this subtopic, I will talk about first civilization, religious, language, political organization and control, empire and colonies. I hope you'll stay with us since I found this topic are quite interesting. For the introductions, the region was a heart for early technical development include three monarchy religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Future technical and artistic development in the medieval Muslim Empire, and a focus for geopolitical strategies by major world power from the 18th. These regions has influenced and has been influenced by neighboring regions. Religions and language are as politics and economics in the world regions. For the first civilizations, the Tigris European River Valley of Mesopotamia and the Nile River Valley form two of the world's earliest culture herds, act as a hub with constant movement of people to and from Northern Africa, Europe, and China. Before the AD 600 expansions of Muslim Arabs, the internal empire of Assyrians, Babylonians, and Egyptians gave way to the external control from Persia, Greece, Rome, and then the Byzantine. The picture on the right shows you the Nile River Valley and the Tigris European River Valley of Mesopotamia. Religions. The early animations religions had many gods linked to natural phenomena. After 1000 BC of dominance by religions with many gods, gave way to religions based on single gods, monotheisms. Judaism was the first monotheism religion. Christianity grew out of Judaism, and then Islam emerged to become the dominant religions, but the Judaism and Christianity are still in the regions up till today. First religion, Judaism. Judaism is a religion whose adherents worship Yahweh, seen as the only God, creator, and lawgiver. It began in Israel and the Palestinian territory around 2000 BC. Focus on hierarchical role of family based off the line of Abraham. Precaution beginning with slavery in Egypt, redemption as Moses led the people out of Egypt, and the occupation of the Promised Land. In AD 70, the Roman army destroyed Jerusalem and dispersed Jews. The second one is Christianity. Christianity is a major religion stemming from the life, teaching, death, and claimed restorations of Jesus Nazareth. Began as Jews who believed that Jesus of Nazareth was the Messiah. In the late AD 300s, The Roman Empire Constantine declared it to be the empire's official religion. Controversies over how much Jesus was man and how much God resulted in divisions within Christianity. A later divisions occur between the Easterns, which is Orthodox, and the Westerns, which is Catholic, group of church in Europe. The picture on your left shows you the Coptic church in Egypt and the church in Turkey. Islam. Muhammad founded Islam in Arabia, notable in Mecca and Medina during the early AD 600s. Muhammad adopted many Jewish and Christianity beliefs such as monotheism. After Muhammad's death in 632, Arabs spread Islam to northern Africa and Spain as well as eastward into Central Asia, uniting the Arab people and creating a series of empires converting Persians, Turks, and people in India. It leads to Muslim golden age of artistic and scientific achievement and future military expansion from 800 to 1100. Islamic visuals are often characterized by abstract patterns that avoid depreciating human form, range from pottery and metalwork to paintings and textile. Calligraphy became the most important form of art because of the religious significance of Quran. The Sunni Muslims are the majority Muslim group and base their way of life through Quran and Sunnah, unlike the Shia Muslim, which only follow the Quran and dispute the Sunnah. The picture shows the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. Next is language. We have 5 languages we're going to talk about, which is Arabic, Berber, Turkish, Farsi, and Hebrew. Arabic. Arabic is spoken by under 50% of the people in the regions. It is the preferred language in the Quran and Muslim prayer. Arabs, who were once defined as living in the Arabian Peninsula, now include all those using Arabic as their first language. Do you know how to speak thank you in Arabic? In Arabic, we say shukran as thank you. Berber. It is found primarily in Morocco and Algeria, especially in the Atlas Mountains and Sahara Desert. Speakers of various Berber language make up around 50% of population in Morocco and about 25% in Algeria. The name Berber comes from Greek word barbaros, barbarians. And the way they say thank you in Berber was sahih. Turkish. It is a member of the Atlantic family which spread westwards from Central Asia. Turkish speakers in Turkey use the Roman script reflecting Euro influence of Turkey. The Azeri or Azerbaijanians in Iran also Turkish speakers who use the Arabic script. A large number of the world's Turkish speakers live in Central Asia. In Turkish, they have 3 ways of saying thank you, and one of them is teşekkür ederim. Teşekkür ederim. Farsi. It is a subfamily of Indo-European language. It is official language of Iran. Significant population of speakers can be found in other Persian Gulf countries, Bahrain, Iraq, Oman, Yemen, and the United Arab Emirates. And again, I will teach you how to speak thank you in Farsi. There's 3 ways to speak thank you in Farsi. The first way is mamnuna. The second one is mutazakkaram. And the last one is mercy. Yes, mercy. It is from French words. Lastly, Hebrew. It is official language of Israel. The language of Hebrew Bible and religious service is an archaic form suspended by everyday usage by modern Israel Hebrew. Zionists revived the use of Hebrew and modernized it for secular usage to provide a common religious and secular element among Jews in many countries. They say thank you in Hebrew is toda. We have come to the last part of this subtopic, which is politics, organization and control, empire and colonies. In this part, we will talk about Persian dynasty, Ottoman Turk, European colonies and protectorates. Persia dynasty. Invading Mongols ruled Persia until the 14th, when the Shah-dominated Safavids gradually reclaimed Persia and established a dynasty that lasts until 1722. The Shiite ulama asserted and early doctrines that only they were true interpreters of the Quran, and therefore leader of Islamic communities. By 1722, they took political control from the Safavids but had no military force to resist the Afghans, who rose against the government of Khazar and then took much of Persia. Then the chaotic government followed. Ottoman Turk. In the 15th, the Turkish Ottoman Empire under Suleiman the Magnificent conquered the Mediterranean coastline as far as Morocco and also took much of Balkan Europe. The early vigor of Ottoman subsidized into maintaining their position and even attacking other Muslims as they established control over Arab lands. But the overseas colonial expansion of European countries eroded the empire. The Ottomans did little after the 17th to encourage modernization or involvement in the expanding global economic system. European colonies and protectorates. From the 18th, the North of American coastline became colonies and protectorates of France, which is Tunisia, Morocco and Algeria, also Libya in Italy, and also Britain that consists of Egypt, Sudan and much of the Southern Arabia Peninsula and Gulf Coast after the 1869 opening the Suez Canal. Russia took land in the north. Some of the more isolated tribes in Arabia became large independents under their own kings or sultans. During the World War I, the British and French built on Arab nationalisms to expel the Turks from the areas and become Palestine, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Iraq, and the Arabian Peninsula. Arab Southeast Asia countries gained independence in different ways from colonial overlords. The area remained under the disintegrating Ottoman Empire until World War I, after which the League of Nations made Syria and Lebanon French protectorates. The rest of the area was placed under British protection. The French encouraged republican governments. British protection guaranteed the survival of the kingdoms they established, including Jordan, that's still monarchy until today, Iraq, a monarchy until 1958, and the small emirates along the Persian Gulf under traditional local rules or emirs. In the 1970s, 7 emirates unite as the United Arab Emirates, UAE. Animosities against former Turkish and European colony power that were generated by colonial decisions such as establishment of the country of Israel remain a significant factor in the understanding international tensions. This whole region have been historically significant because it had been a heart of human civilization. Great empire arose the regions, but in the 18th and 19th, Europe's exerted their control over the regions. Judaism and Christianity also emerged in the regions. The Arab language and the Islamic regions are important to most countries today. Although Turkey and Iran have their own language, Israel stands apart of the rest in both language and religion. Thank you.
Now, we enter the topic of organization in Northern Africa and Southwestern Asia. There are 4 major organizations in this region, which are Palestine Liberation Organization (PLO), Arab League, Organization of the Islamic Conference (OIC), and Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries OPEC. The first organization is also the member of the Arab League, which is Palestine Liberation Organization (PLO). Palestine Liberation Organization is a political organization that providing an umbrella for many smaller groups that demand a country for Palestinians, the people that living in the land used to create the state of Israel. This organization is founded in 1964 during a summit in Cairo, Egypt. The United States and Israel consider the PLO as a terrorist organization until the Madrid Conference in 1991. In 1993, this organization recognized Israel's right to exist in peace and rejected violence and terrorism. Israel then officially recognized the Palestine Liberation Organization as the representative of the Palestinian people. Since 1974, this organization is recognized as the sole legitimate representative of the Palestinian people by over 100 states with which it holds a diplomatic relation with. Next organization is the Arab League. The Arab League was created in 1945 to encourage the united opposition of Arab countries to the establishment of Israel. Its 7 founding members were the only independent Arab countries at the time, but its membership has increased to 22 as more gain independence. The Arab League linked Arab countries in the Western Mediterranean with those in the Eastern Mediterranean and Southwestern Asia. After Egypt's 1979 accord with Israel, the Arab League expelled Egypt and transferred the Arab League headquarters from Cairo to Tunis. Egypt and Syria had joined as the United Arab Republic under the leadership of Colonel Jamal Nasser with the intent of persuading other countries to commit their future to a single pan-Arab country. It did not attract the others and soon broke up. This unity, military defeat, and tension over the Israel-Palestine issue and among countries with different resources bases weakened the Arab League and its ability to foster unity among Arab countries in the 1980s and 1990s. A major blow to the Arab League came in the Gulf War of 1990 until 1991 when one Arab country, which is Iraq, invaded Kuwait and was defeated by a coalition of other Arab countries backed by the United States and other Western countries. Many Arabs felt betrayed by both Saddam Hussein's invasion of another Arab country and their own need to rely on outside help. It was clear that the interests of individual countries remained more significant than an overriding pan-Arabism, feeling that were repeated in later Arab Economic Summit. This is the latest list of the Arab League members as of 2008. Third organization is the Organization of the Islamic Conference (OIC). In the 1970s and 1980s, as individual countries preferred their independence to a pan-Arab identity, religious affiliation became more significant. In 1970, foreign ministers of Muslim countries set up the Organization of the Islamic Country (OIC), which now has 57 members, including such countries as Pakistan, Indonesia, and even Nigeria. Its main priority is to return Jerusalem to Muslim control. The plan is to headquarter the OIC in Jerusalem after this goal is achieved. Until then, the organization headquarters are in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. This organization holds a summit every 3 years. Though its organ and department hold meetings more frequently, Currently, the OIC has many concerns. Examples include Israeli excavation of the Western Wall near the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, the possibility of sending peacekeeping troops to trouble spot in Muslim country, the withdrawal of foreign troops from Iraq, and a resolution to the Israel-Palestinian conflict. In addition to political issues, OIC seeks to promote cooperation among its members in economic, cultural, scientific, and social fields in terms of political issues. This is the latest list of OIC members as of 2019. Malaysia is actually one of the members of OIC. Next organization is OPEC, which is Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. From the early 1900s, international oil companies kept oil price low to consumers in the world's wealthiest country by paying little to the producing countries. In 1960, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, and Venezuela met in Baghdad, Iraq, and founded the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC. OPEC's main purpose is to work as a cartel, which is an organization that coordinates the interests of producing countries by regulating the oil prices. It was not long before the other countries joined OPEC: Qatar in 1961, Indonesia in 1962, Libya in 1962, the United Arab Emirates in 1967, Algeria in 1969, Nigeria in 1971, Ecuador in 1973, Gabon in 1975, and Angola in 2007. Ecuador suspended its membership in December 1992 and did not return until October 2007. Gabon ended its membership in 1995. Indonesia suspended its membership in January 2009 when it stopped being a net exporter of oil. As of 2011, OPEC had 12 members. It counted for 77% of the world's total oil reserve, and the countries of Northern Africa and Southwestern Asia accounted for 73% of OPEC total oil reserve. OPEC oil embargo on wealthy countries during the Arab-Israeli War in 1973 established OPEC as the controlling factor in world oil distribution for a few years. Prices rose fourfold. Revenue of the oil-producing countries boomed in the mid and late 1970s. Countries such as Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, United Arab Emirates, and Iraq gained over 90% of the export earnings from oil sales. They invested their money locally in new roads, hospitals, government building, airport and military headway, as well as in projects and banks outside of the region. The whole wealthier countries that used most of the oil were affected first by the higher oil prices, and then by economic recession. It was soon clear, however, that the high oil prices and recession also adversely affected the world's poorer countries. Western oil companies opened new oil fields outside of the OPEC area, including those in the North Sea, which is Europe, that had previously been too expensive to develop. Beginning in 1990, Russia exported increasing quantities of oil and natural gas as its main source of currency. A world oil glut brought very low market prices and financial problems to the Arab producer. By the late 1990s, the OPEC oil producer and major industrial countries saw that their interest lay in a moderately high but stable oil price. This is the latest list of OPEC members as of 2020.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is FATIN binti MAHAMED. Today, I would like to present two last subtopics, which is 6.0 water politics and 7.0 subregions. Are you okay there? I hope you can still be patient to wait until the end because I'm afraid you're gonna miss some interesting info in these last two subtopics. So enjoy! In 6.0, we will talk about Desalination Plan, Nile River Valley Agreement, Turkish Dam, and Israel-Palestine water issue. Let's begin, shall we? What is water politics? Water politics is much attention to given to all, but the issue of water in this arid region of the world has been highly significant through sub-region history. The major civilizations of the Nile and the Tigris, Euphrates river valleys were based on irrigation water, and many local developments brought water from its source to areas of use. The renewable supplies that come from rain and snowfall feeding rivers are meager over most of these regions. Other sources include underground reservoirs and accumulated over millennia, which means they are virtually non-renewable. Yet, the growth of irrigation farming, the rise of the oil industry, and rapidly growing population have led to greater demands for water and have resulted in conflicts. Like oil, however, water is not evenly distributed. 80% of the region's freshwater is found in the Nile and Tigris-Euphrates river basins. The Jordan River, though much smaller, is crucial to countries that depend on it. However, each of these rivers flows through more than one country, creating a need of cooperation between governments and creating or exacerbating political conflict where agreements cannot be reached. Conflict may increase because freshwater scarcity is becoming more of an issue as populations grow rapidly. Between 1975 and 2001, the amount of freshwater available to each person dropped by more than half. Let's move to 6.1 Desalination Plants. Desalinations. To provide fresh water, the region's wealthier countries have invested heavily in desalination plants, which make seawater usable. Northern Africa and Southwestern Asia account for almost half of the world's desalination capacity. Process of removing salt from seawater to make water suitable for drinking and irrigation, invested heavily in desalination plants. Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates account for about 30% of the world's capacity by themselves and contain the world's 10 larger desalination plants. Saudi Arabia receives about 70% of its freshwater from its desalination plants. Desalination is very energy intensive and consumes much of the region's oil supplies. Increasingly, many governments are planning nuclear power plants to supply the energy needed for desalinations. Despite high costs, continued investment in increasing desalination capacity by about 10% per year. Next is Nile Water Agreement. 6.2 Nile River Valley Agreement. In 1959, Egypt and Sudanese government signed an agreement called Nile Water Agreement. In 1970, they built Aswan High Dam near the Lake Nasser to store sufficient water and generate electricity. On completion of the dam in 1970, Lake Nasser behind the dam stored 3 times Egypt's annual water usage. Sudan receives only 13% of the annual flow, along with the disputes they may continue to have with each other. Egypt and Sudan also now contest the use of the water with countries in the Upper Nile River watershed such as Ethiopia, Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. By 1988, the expectation that the Aswan High Dam will ensure Egypt's water needs for 50 years was proved wrong, and discharge below Aswan had to be reduced to maintain flow through the year. Next, 6.3. 6.3. Series of dams constructed by Turkish governments. The Turkish government constructed a series of dams in southeastern Turkey on the upper reaches of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers as a part of a greater plan to irrigate lands to increase agricultural productions. Because these irrigation projects divert water from Iraq and Syria downstream, tensions have increased between Turkey and these two countries. Next, 6.4. 6.4. Israel-Palestine water issue. Israel, Gaza, and the West Bank occupy a small area of land between the Mediterranean coast and the Jordan River Valley. The terrain includes a coastal plain and mostly hilly land with lower areas around Lake Tiberias, Sea of Galilee, and along the Jordan River to the Dead Sea. Although Israel receives winter rain, the total rainfall is low, and summer drought brings water shortage. Great efforts made it possible to supply water to dry areas and to manage the environment efficiently. Despite such careful management, internal groundwater sources are now fully used, and Israel relies on external sources for 25% of its water. Brackish, slightly saline, water is used for some farming, but can damage the soils if too much is used over many seasons. Urban water supply relies increasingly on coastal desalination plants. The water shortage enters politics. Israel retains jurisdictions over the West Bank and the Golden Heights, both for defense and access to water. Peace negotiations with Jordan included agreement on the use of the Jordan River basin waters, which have become central in the negotiations over the future of the West Banks. Let's move forward to 7.0 subregions. Let's move forward to 7.0 subregions. In this 7.0, we will talk about the region is divided into 5 subregions: North Africa, Nile River Valley, Arab, Southwest Asia, Israel and Palestine, and Iran and Turkey. However, Iran and Turkey is not included in the syllabus. Before I start, I would like to ask to all of you to recite Al-Fatiha and giving a prayer to the victims who were killed in the country of Gaza and the explosion in Lebanon. Al-Fatiha. Thank you for showing some respect and love towards them. Now, let's start. 7.1 is about North Africa. Here we are showing you the maps of North Africa. As we all can see, the countries of North Africa face the Mediterranean Sea and southern Europe west of Egypt and have desert interiors. The Nile River Valley links Egypt and Sudan. The region's heartland of Arab Southwest Asia extends from Syria in the northwest to Oman in the east. The western section consisting of Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, plus Palestine and Israel, sometimes including Turkey, is referred to as Al-Mushriq, Levant in English. Israel and the Palestinian territories form a continuing focus of tensions within the region. Iran and Turkey, two of the largest countries in population and area, form the northern and eastern borders, have mostly mountainous terrains. They differ from the rest and each other in language, with Farsi and Turkish, respectively, instead of Arabic. Now let's talk about list of countries in North Africa. The 4 countries of North Africa are Algeria, Libya, Morocco, with Western Sahara, and Tunisia, each with differing population sizes. Over 80% of Algeria's and Libya's territories are desert, but Morocco and Tunisia do not extend so far into the arid Saharan environment. The northern parts of Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia are dominated by the Atlas Mountains, and the area is known as the Maghreb. It includes high-range Mount Toubkal in Morocco is 13,665 feet in altitude, broken by internal plateaus and river valleys. The harsh, largely arid, and often mountainous natural environments of the North African countries restrict agriculture and most human settlement to a small percentage of the territory along the northern coast and in the immediate mountainous hinterland. Problems of water supply affect all these countries. Although located at a considerable distance from the heart of the Muslim or Arabic world in Southwest Asia, this region shares an adherence to Islam as the almost exclusive religion, and Arabic is even more dominant as the official language. The ties with other Muslim Arab countries was strengthened when the Arab League's headquarters was in Tunis from 1979 to 1989 before moving back to Cairo, Egypt. North Africa faces Europe across the Mediterranean Sea. Many of its past political ties and present economic links are northward to Spain, France, and Italy. Algeria, Morocco, and Tunisia retain particularly close ties with France and have strong links to markets in Europe for selling products, buying goods, and sending immigrant labor. Libya sells much of its oil and gas to Italy. The European Union's 1986 extension to include Spain, Portugal, and Greece, which compete with North Africa for similar agricultural produce markets, placed stresses on this relationship. In the 800s BC, the coast was settled by traders from the eastern Mediterranean, who established the Kingdom of Carthage. This was conquered by Rome, then overrun by Vandals in the AD 400s, but retaken by the Christian Byzantines. Arabs invaded in the AD 600s, converted the local Berber tribes to Islam, and imposed new ways of life. The Muslim, Moor invasions of Spain followed in 700, producing the architectural riches of Cordoba, Seville, and Granada as reflections of the wealth and civilizations they brought, including tolerations of local Christians and Jews. By 1500 internal divisions and weaker control allowed Spanish Christians to expel the Muslims, forcing over 1 million to move back to North Africa. From the 1200s, pirate groups controlled most of the sub-region's port cities. The coast, apart from Morocco, became known as the Barbary Coast, making the western Mediterranean dangerous for merchant shipping and contributing to the declines of Mediterranean ports in southern Europe. The pirates continued their activities even after the Ottoman Empire took control of this area in the 1500s. During the 1800s, European countries and the United States stopped the pirate attacks, and France annexed territory in Algeria and later in Tunisia and Morocco. In Algeria, Tunisia, and Morocco, French settlers and local people established commercial farms that grew citrus fruits and produced wine for European markets. The settlers took political and administrative control of the colonies. After World War II, nationalist groups fought for and obtained independence. In 1956 in Morocco and Tunisia, and in 1962 in Algeria. Libya remained poor, a mainly desert area of little economic or political outside interest until Italy occupied it in 1911. After World War II, Italy was replaced by a British-French protectorate until Libyan independence was achieved in 1952. If there has history, must have recent changes also, right? So back to the changes. Independent Algeria has been ruled by democratically elected governments with socialist policies based on central planning. After the fundamentalist Islamic Salvation Front (FIS) had a strong showing in the first round of elections in December 1991, the military intervened, cancelled the second round of voting, and banned all religiously based political parties, which included the FIS. A civil war erupted between the army and guerrilla groups. Terrorist activities and army repression through the 1990s devastated Algeria's economy, and people with over 100,000 deaths, and the army's destructions of the FIS as a political party. The war essentially ended in 2002, after most of the remnants of the main guerrilla groups disbanded, surrendered, or accepted amnesty. Protests in the Kabylie region along the coast in 2001 resulted in the government recognizing Berber as a national language, which is now taught in schools. Elections held in 1999, 2004, and 2009 all have been won by Abdelaziz Bouteflika, who is backed by the military. Since Tunisia's independence in 1956, it mostly has been ruled by just two leaders. The first, Habib Bourguiba, established a strict one-party state and ruled for 31 years before being ousted by his interior minister, Zain el-Abidine Ben Ali. In a bloodless coup in 1987, both leaders sought to modernize their country, suppress Islamic fundamentalism, and promote women's rights. Despite some progressive policies, Ben Ali, a former policeman, suppressed the freedom of the press and had operatives infiltrate trade unions and universities. An increasingly corrupt police force grew larger than the police force of France, which had a population 6 times that of Tunisia. Members of Ben Ali's large family became mafia-like by skimming profits for themselves from every sector of the economy. As their activities drained the strength of the economy and scared away foreign investors, the growing ranks of a new class of unemployed university graduates became increasingly frustrated. Unemployment among people under 30 years old approached 30%. Worst cases, tensions exploded with the death of Mohamed Bouazizi, an unemployed university graduate who could not find a job. He tried to make a living by erecting a stall along a street to sell vegetables. Police confiscated his stall because Bouazizi did not have the proper permits, or probably did not pay the appropriate bribe. On December 17, 2010, he went to the town square, put gasoline on himself, and lighted himself on fire to commit suicide. Young people began to march in the streets to express their outrage at his plight. The police responded harshly, resulting in the death of more than 30 people by early January. Police actions provoked a revolution. On the evening of January 14, 2011, after 40,000 protesters gathered at the Interior Ministry in Tunis, Ben Ali and his immediate family fled to Saudi Arabia. Some call these events the Jasmine Revolution. It certainly inspired frustrated young people across the region, especially in Egypt, Libya, and Yemen, to believe that youthful protests could topple dictatorial governments. At this writing, much of Libya remained under the rule of Colonel Muammar al-Gaddafi, who seized power in 1969 and ran the country according to what Gaddafi called his Third Universal Theory, a mixed military, socialist and Islamic republic. In the 1970s and 1980s, he sponsored terrorism to promote his ideological system, which included the destruction of a pan-armed airliner over Lockerbie, Scotland in 1988, the US bombing of Tripoli and UN sanctions from 1992 curbed such activities. After Libya accepted responsibility for the Lockerbie bombing in 2003, the UN lifted sanctions. Soon after, Libya agreed to reveal and end its programs to develop weapons of mass destruction and to renounce terrorism. In 2006, the United States rescinded its categorizations of Libya as a state sponsor of terrorism. Gaddafi did not reform his country but remained oppressive. Inspired by the events in neighboring Tunisia and Egypt, protesters took to the streets in several Libyan cities by mid-February 2011. Gaddafi responded violently, which resulted in civil war with the rebels using Benghazi in the east as their capital. The United States and NATO declared a no-fly zone over Libya and supported the rebels with airstrikes against forces loyal to Gaddafi. The actions prevented Gaddafi's forces from crushing the rebels, but left the country still divided between Gaddafi loyalists and rebels at the end of May 2011. North Africa, rich with ethnic variety. People, Arab and Berber people, with Muslim faith constitute over 95% of the populations of these countries. Speakers of local dialects and traditional groups of nomadic pastoralists now make up a small proportion of the populations. Colonial legacies include many French speakers among educated middle classes in the Maghreb countries, while Italian has a similar role in Libya. Of course, country with many people and variety of ethnic, there must be employment and migrations. The current rapid population growth creates problems for the region's education systems and employment prospects. Intensive education programs provide primary school literacy and redress the male-female differences in opportunity. Nevertheless, shortage of skilled labor continue while unemployment rates are high, from almost 10% in Algeria and Morocco to 30% in Libya. Libya is also a transit point for human trafficking. People headed to Europe from Africa and Asia are often forced into prostitution, many labor or begging to pay off debts to smugglers. Egyptians, Sudanese, and Ethiopians are brought to Libya for labor exploitations. Furthermore, since the 1970s, many North Africans have migrated to France and other European countries, where low-paying, mainly manual, jobs were available. More recently, there have been fewer vacancies and resistance to immigration from North Africa has increased. Today, around 2.3 million North African workers send home wages from European countries, especially France and Spain. That's a lot. For Morocco, for example, remittance account for about 18% of export and 5% of GDP. When workers return from Europe, they often set up a store or business and buy a good house. Other destinations for North African migrant workers are Kuwait and Saudi Arabia. Each country has a growing university-educated group, but these people find few well-paid professional employment outlets that, combined with the oppressive political regimes, spurs many to emigrate to Europe and the United States, creating a significant brain drain. Such an interesting. In North Africa, they also have population distributions and dynamics. The populations of Northern Africa and Southwestern Asia tends to be concentrated near the Mediterranean and Red Seas, the Persian Gulf, and in the fertile valleys of the Nile and the Tigris-Euphrates rivers. Moderate densities are also found in the rest of Turkey and western Iran. Much of the region is almost empty of people. The populations of all the region's countries continue to grow rapidly and are expected to increase by more than one-third over the next 20 years. High birth rates combined with falling death rates result in the rapid population's growth. In recent years, many of the region's countries have implemented policies to slow birth rates. For example, Tunisia set a minimum age for marriage and instituted a successful family planning program soon after it obtained independence. Morocco and Algeria implemented family planning and maternal and child services. Egypt's support for family planning resulted in a drop in the country's total fertility rate from over 5 to 3.0 between the 1970s and mid-2010. Do not forget that every country also have human rights. Basic human rights for all citizens are a concern in many countries in Northern Africa and Southwestern Asia. For example, police abuses are widespread. Individuals have few resources to defend themselves when accused of crimes, and penalties often are severe, with the death penalty applied frequently. Turkey is the only country that has abolished the death penalty, which is did in 2002. Also, countries like Algeria, Lebanon, and Morocco are the only ones that have maintained moratoriums on executions for as much as 20 years. Next is three economic activities in North Africa. Firstly, they provide service in tourism industry. In Morocco and Tunisia, tourism is a major source of income based on their sunshine coastal locations, which is in Maghrebi and Morocco, historic and cultural sites, and stable political environments. Most tourists come from Northern Europe with its cool and rainy climate and high disposable income. This is organized by Moroccan National Tourist Company. This company is the biggest tourist company in Morocco that has so much to offer for their customers. Second, economic activities in North Africa. Its mining activity in natural resources industry was located in Gerissa, Tunisia. This industry was led by Société du Jibel de Rissa. This company, founded in 1899, that began operations in 1907. It produced up to 700,000 tons per year of hematite ore in the years before World War II, but the production dropped after the war. In advance, Tunisia has a small steel industry too. Third, economic activities in North Africa is agriculture. As you all know, that agriculture is the most popular economic activity in the most countries. In North Africa, they have a harvesting industry. It was located in southern Tunisia. This industry was conducted by Al-Hidayah. Al-Hidayah Agriculture is currently farming more than 600 of agricultural land in southern Tunisia. This region is well known for its microclimate, allowing early harvest, and for its underground water resources. Did you know that 45% of Morocco's labor force in agriculture, though agriculture accounts for only 70% of Morocco's GDP? Algeria and Morocco export citrus fruits, vegetables such as tomatoes and potatoes, and cut flowers for European markets. Morocco also exports cork from the bark of oak trees and fish squid for export to Japan and tuna. Back then, we talked about North Africa journey and history. As a result, North African countries also have growing government bureaucracies and service occupations in education and healthcare. They are challenged to both fund these growing bureaucracies and create jobs for growing populations. Now, on the following point, we're going to talk about 7.2, the Nile River Valley. Here is the maps of the Nile River. The Nile River provides a life-giving water supply to Egypt and Sudan that has sustained a human presence in the dry Eastern Sahara since the early days of farming and civilization. The histories of the two modern countries were linked over many centuries by the Nile River and political control. Although the Nile River waters provide a basis for living in an arid climatic environment, the resource is finite. Pressures from increasing populations make it difficult for Egypt and Sudan to continue to modernize and diversify their economies. Both are economically poor countries, with major balance of payments problems. Neither produce sufficient export income to pay for the imported needs of its people, both rely on aid from the world's wealthier countries and the major Arab oil producers. Okay, before we start, do you guys ever watch Ayat Cinta movie previously? In 2008, there were acting and the scenery in the Nile River Valley. If you've not watched yet, go and check it out. This is the list of countries in Nile River Valley, Egypt and Sudan. Egypt and Sudan share some commonalities, but their geographic positions, political environments, and products create differences. Egypt is the largest Arab country in the population, 80.4 million in mid-2010, and one of the foremost in international relations. It retains control over the major global choke point of the Suez Canal, which has been widened to accommodate increasingly large shipping vessels. It also controls the Sinai Peninsula, which is the little-used land routes from Africa into southwestern Asia. By contrast, Sudan has twice the area of Egypt, but only about half the population, and has an isolated position relative to global trading. Part of the southern Saharan rim, it has conditions somewhat similar to those of its neighbors Chad and Ethiopia, and resembles other African countries in many ways. Okay, let's story about political history, from empires to colonies and independence. The earliest Egyptian empire dominated the lower Nile River Valley from around 3200 BC. The centers at Memphis in the north and Thebes in the south of modern Egypt expanded influence over the Nubian kingdom in the area of modern Sudan. The complex imperial history ended when Alexander the Great conquered Egypt in 332 BC, and the Romans and Byzantines imposed control up to the AD 500s. During the later part of this period, the Christian Coptic Church spread through the area and southward into Ethiopia. After becoming a Muslim country in the 1500s, Sudan extended its territory southward. Although many of the tribes in the southern area retained their traditional beliefs and some became Christians, in the 1800s, Egyptian forces attacked Sudan, but they held out until the British joined in an 1899 invasion. After this, Sudan came under the joint control of the United Kingdom and Egypt. British engineers constructed irrigation works in the Jazeera area south of the junction between the White Nile and Blue Nile rivers. Recent events. The year 1952 marked a turning point in Egypt's modern history. After centuries of Ottoman and then British domination, Egypt exercised its full independence and became a socialized state with new priorities focused on its own international needs. President Gamal Abdel Nasser hoped Egypt would lead the Arab world and for a few years combine Egypt and Syria in a single country. by getting the Soviet Union to help build the Aswan High Dam on the Nile River. He also exploited Cold War politics. Under Nasser's leadership, Egypt developed more rapidly than the rest of Africa in the 1960s and 1970s. From 1981, Egypt was under the leadership of Mohammed Hosni Mubarak, who moved his country very slowly toward democracy. For example, though Mubarak slowly toward democracy was serving in his fifth term in office in early 2011, the 2005 election marked the first time that an opponent was allowed to run against him in an election. Even then, election observers reported government interference through vote rigging and police brutality. Following his victory, vote rigging and police brutality, Mubarak imprisoned his election rival. He allowed greater freedom of the press, but the military remained at the center of power. It was fully expected that Mubarak's son would succeed him, though the family had lost its popularity. Though willing to allow greater freedom, Mubarak was determined to prevent the mixing of politics and religion. So he made sure that religiously based political parties were banned. This included the Muslim Brotherhood, most likely the greatest opposition to Mubarak and his National Democratic Party, NDP. Sudan regained its independence in 1956. Despite Egypt's effort to keep control, the tensions resulting from the period of Egyptian occupations of Sudan and fears of future Egyptian expansion remain in the minds of many Sudanese and affect negotiations over the use of Nile River water. Internally, the Arabic Muslim peoples have controlled the government in a series of military regimes that have tried to impose Arabic and Islamic culture and traditions upon all the peoples of the country, including the South, which is primarily Black African and either Christian or enemies. Consequently, civil war occurred between 1955 and 1972. Following a period of peace, a second civil war erupted in 1983. A ruling military junta composed of a mixture of the military and Islamists took control in 1989. Sporadic violence continued but began to die down in 1999 when Sudan's government moved toward multi-party politics internally and better international relations. Peace talks in the early 2000s led to the signing of several accords. In 2005, the final North or South Comprehensive Peace Agreement (CPA) granted the Southern rebels autonomy for 6 years, after which a referendum on independence was scheduled. This took place in January 2011. At the same time, of not known, though, at the time of the writing of this book, the result of the referendum were not known, though it was widely believed that the people of Southern Sudan overwhelmingly voted for independence. A separate conflict erupted in the western province of Darfur in 2003. Furthermore, in ethnic diversity, with an Asian history, Egyptians constitute a discrete subgroup within the larger Arab population spread throughout the region. Although most are Muslims, Coptic Christians are a sizable minority of Egyptians. Primarily in Alexandria and Cairo, they are a very old Christian group, originally converted by Saint Mark, although one of the 4 Gospels of the New Testament. Egyptians speak Arabic but have a distinct dialect known as Egyptian Arabic, although this is becoming widely understood through Egyptian broadcasting. In contrast, to the Egyptian, Sudan is very diverse, with over 600 ethnic groups and 400 languages spoken. Islamic and Arabic diffused from Egypt over the centuries and assimilated many people, such as the Beja. Arab Muslims and Arabist Muslims tend to be in the north. The peoples in the south are related to the peoples of Africa South and of the Sahara, and practice traditional animistic religions for Christianity. Moreover, in economic development, Egypt and Sudan have both had growing economies in recent years. Nevertheless, Egypt struggles with little agricultural land, a large population, and a highly centralized economy. Recording its first trade surplus in 1999, Sudan's economy still has far to go in overcoming decades of internal strife that continue to threaten the economic well-being of the country's inhabitants. First, economic activities in Nile River Valley. There's a few types of agriculture industry in Nile River Valley, but one of the best type of activity is cotton activity. The location also stated in Alexandria, Egypt. Company that manage this industry is Abu Madawi Co. In addition, Abu Madawi Co. is the highest experience in the cotton field as their employers are ex-government employees. In other hands, Sudan. More than 80% of Sudan's labor force works in agriculture and produce a third of GDP. Sudan exports cotton, sesame, livestock, groundnuts, gum arabic, and sugar. Recent discoveries of oil also provide export income. Second economic activities in Nile River Valley is service activity, which is in tourism industry and located in the Great Pyramid of Giza, Egypt. The company that arranged this industry is Aswan Private Tours. Aswan Private Tours provide a professional take care of 24/7 hours and days for their customer. In additional info, tourism based around Egypt's historic treasures such as the pyramids and temples along the Nile River are important for the economy. Since the 1990s, Islamic fundamentalists have periodically attacked foreign tourists, causing slumps in the numbers of foreign visitors. Nevertheless, the number of foreign visitors grew from 1.25 million in 1980 to 12.3 million in 2008. It's quite a big score, is it? Third, economic activities in Nile River Valley. Obviously, the most important and the most famous one is transport service activity in transportation industry. Location also in Nile River Valley. The company that arranged this industry is Egypt National Railways. It's considered the backbone of passenger transport in Egypt, where the volume of railway passengers and goods transport were about 1.4 million passengers a day. Quite a lot. For example, in business, it's important because transportation is the major sources during process between countries for export and import. Precisely, in advance, today, Egypt largely earns income through exports of oil, cotton, and textiles, but must import machinery, food, chemicals, and wood products. Its main trading partners are the United States, European countries, Syria, Saudi Arabia, and China. Suez Canal revenues also contribute to Egypt's income. Can you imagine how a lot of the revenue and the passengers going there? From here on, we're gonna talk about our last subpoints. Therefore, let's proceed to the 7.3 Arab Southwest Asia. Shown here is the maps of Arab Southwest Asia. Arab Southwest Asia is the heart of the Arab and Islamic worlds. I agree with that, are you? It comprises the Arabian Peninsula and the Fertile Crescent that includes the Tigris-Euphrates River basin and the Lebanon coast. The world centers of Islam that are Muslim pilgrimage sites are located in the Arabian Peninsula at Mecca. where Muhammad SAW was born in AD 570, and at Medina, which became his power base after he was expelled from Mecca. Despite having few people, the countries of this sub-region play a major part in the world affairs because of their oil wealth and involvement in the Arab-Israeli peace process. We begin with list of countries in Arab Southwest Asia, referring to Bahrain, Lebanese, Iraq, Oman, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, Yemen, UAE, and Syria. The Arab Southwest Asia countries are differentiated by forms of government, emphasis within Islam, and natural resources of oil and water. The differences in natural resources and economic management produce a wide range of economic status, from countries that remain poor to those that rival the world's wealthiest. Arab Southwest Asia is rich in history and culture. Some of the earliest known towns are here. Ancient Mesopotamia, situated along the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, has long been considered the cradle of human civilizations. In medieval times, the expansive and prosperous Muslim empires were centered in the sub-region, first under the Umayyad dynasty with its capital in Damascus, and then under the Abbasid dynasty with its capital in Baghdad. Coupled with its role as the heart of the three Western religions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, this sub-region has played a major role in the development of both Western and wider world civilization. Now moving to the governments. The governments of the countries in this sub-region vary, but few have been democratic. Many of the oil-rich countries remain dominated by ruling families or dictators. Saudi Arabia is the only country named after a family, the Saudia, who still rule with the title of king and support a huge range of related princes. Other Gulf countries have sheikh, emira, and sultans with similar roles, and Jordan has a king. Syria has a military dictatorship until the fall of Saddam Hussein. Iraq had a military dictatorship but is now moving forward democracy. In Lebanon, a greater degree of democracy now exists after a destructive civil war in the 1980s and 1990s between the Muslim and Christian groups, spurred on by Islamic extremists. Although Syria still exercises a major influence, despite tight rule, Arab governments have not been immune to the democratic protests that began in Tunisia and spread. Some promised reform, while others cracked down on protests harshly. In either circumstance, change has not come quickly or easily. Syria's dictatorship under Hafiz Assad lasted for 30 years. The minority Shiite Alawite people took control of the army and the socialist Ba'ath Party, supported by the Soviet Union during the Cold War. Syria fostered extremist groups that took part in the Lebanese civil war and in actions against Israel and European countries. After the Soviet connection ended in 1991, Syria's inward-looking economy suddenly sought to enter the global economic system, privatized business, expanded their activities. The tensions in the sub-region led to conflicts among the countries. Iraq and Iran fought a war through the 1980s. The Gulf War in 1991 resulted from Iraq's invasion of Kuwait the previous year. Internal conflicts sprang up in Oman from 1970 to 1975 and in Yemen in the 1980s. The latter resulted in the merger of North Yemen with the Yemen People's Democratic Republic in 1990s. The 1994 renewed outbreak of violence between the two parts of Yemen highlighted remaining differences. Victory went to the northern Islamists over the southern socialists. After siding with Saddam Hussein of Iraq in the Gulf War, Yemen lost foreign aid and saw its workers deported from Saudi Arabia. When the USS Cole was bombed in the Yemen harbor of Aden in late 2000, Yemen was suspected of housing Al-Qaeda terrorists, especially as the government scarcely controls a number of rural hideouts. In 2002, the Yemen government vowed support for the US war against terrorism. Protests for a reform began in Yemen in mid-January 2011, almost in conjunction with those in Tunisia and Egypt. Many government leaders resigned, and President Ali Abdullah Saleh stated that he would step down in 2013 if he could be immune from persecution. Meanwhile, tensions escalated as gunmen killed over 40 protesters and wounded 200 others in March, leaving Yemen in an uncertain situation. Along with ethnicity people in Arab Southeast Asia, the people of this sub-region are mainly Arabs and Muslims, but important variations exist. The Kurds, who live in Iraq, Syria, Turkey, and Iran, are Muslims, but are not Arabs. Lebanon contains a very diverse set of Christian as well as Muslim groups. Among the Christians are Maronites, Greek Catholics, Greek Orthodox, Roman Catholics, Jacobites, Armenian Orthodox, Nestorians, and Protestants, both Sunni and Shia Muslim, along with subgroups such as ISMAIL's Alawites, found in larger number in neighboring Syria, and Druze live in Lebanon along with Jews. Yemen contains groups of African origin. The Gulf countries have important groups of Asian people, mainly foreign workers with temporary residence, but some who are allowed to stay longer, while Oman has many links from its former trade with Eastern Africa. Continued with economic development. Arab Southwest Asia has major economic differences between countries with high oil revenues and those that produce little or no oil. The different levels of income are reflected in the ownership of consumer goods and total income. Other than that, the richer countries bordering the Persian Gulf sit on huge oil reserves, and exploiting these reserves has brought high incomes. These countries have small total populations and rely on immigrant labor. Wealth is not distributed widely or evenly among their populations, either through increased wages or through social services such as education and healthcare. The menial, low-wage jobs and much of the commerce, especially in retailing, are left to Indians and other Asian immigrants. Now we enter in the tourist and pilgrimage sites. The hot sunny climate and status as a major stopover for international passenger airlines from Europe to Asia, as well as the cultural attraction of the sub-region, form well as the cultural attraction of the sub-region, the basis for a growing tourist industry in some countries that contain religious centers or have a welcoming political stability. For example, UAE had over 7.1 million tourists in 2008 following international marketing of their sunny climate and shopping opportunities. In the 2000s, new islands for tourist resorts were built off the coast of Dubai, UAE. Although it refused entry to tourists, Saudi Arabia had 14.8 million foreign visitors in 2008. Some were business people, but most were pilgrims at this time for the Islamic sites in Mecca and Medina that every Muslim wishes to visit at least once in his or her lifetime. Definitely, Islam people would like to go Medina and Mecca at least once in their lifetime. It's like heaven house from Allah SWT. Anyone has been there before? I'm already got there. Anyone? You must embrace the memories from there, right? So cheers! As we all know, the Arab Southwest Asia has changes the urban patterns, which is high densities of homes, commercial premises, and public buildings inside city walls mark the traditional small towns of the region and their central medinas. Medinas, named after the sacred Muslim city in Saudi Arabia, are historic sectors of cities valued for their distinctive structure and social fabric. Their labyrinthine alleys, souks, commercial areas, and artisan shops relate them to the past and attract tourists. Within these sectors existed a rigid patterns of land use. Prestigious craft workers such as religious artisans had premises close to a central mosque, castle, and square. Those in lower occupations, such as leather workers, existed on the edges. The residential population tended to concentrate in quarters, usually based on religion, so that separate Muslim, Jewish, and Christian quarters were common. The World Heritage List of Historic Cities contains many medinas across the whole region, from Fez and Marrakesh in the west to the tall, brown mud houses and Yemen in Southwest Asia. Today, city walls remain only in cities where tourist interests are economically important, such as Fez and Marrakesh, which is Morocco. As traditional trading and craft industries give way to manufacturing and service industries, urban landscapes change with the constructions of prestigious government offices in capital cities, high-rise apartments, hotels, and offices just outside the old centers. Beyond are extensive suburban spreads of housing, factories, and shopping facilities. Many older town areas were abandoned to poor people when merchants and business people moved to more spacious home and commercial premises in the new suburbs. The factories and supermarkets changed patterns of working and social movements. Segregation by wealth and social group is common with the cities, especially in oil-rich Arab Southwest Asia, where Arabs often live apart from immigrant workers. Historically, Fez, Cairo, and Constantinople, today Istanbul, were three important global cities, and they rank as the third, fourth, and fifth largest cities in the world as recently as the 80s, though having fallen in global significance. Istanbul, Turkey, and Cairo, Egypt are the two largest cities in the region today and have many global city region characteristics. Abu Dhabi, Dubai, both in the United Arab Emirates, and Riyadh are considerably smaller but have many global connections. On the other hand, the isolation of Iran from much of the global economy leaves Tehran with few global city features, though it is the third largest city in the region. Now we enter the most important part, which is human rights. In general concerns, gender inequalities are a continuing issue in Muslim countries. Male attitudes and the law work against equal opportunities for women. As with other aspects of Muslim culture, local interpretations and practice vary. Considerable debate exists in Muslim countries over what the Quran says on these matters. Saudi Arabia boycotted the 1995 Fourth World Conference on Women in Beijing on the grounds it was anti-Islamic. In Iran, it is a criminal offense for a woman not to wear a headscarf. And yet, Muslim-dominated countries such as Turkey, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Indonesia have elected women leaders in recent years, while Saudi Arabia excludes women from all public activity. Tunisia promoted women's rights after its independence in 1957. Did you know that now in Arab Saudi, they are already allowed women to get a license for drive car? Surprisingly, right? Literacy and education are a measure of human rights and women's empowerment. In general, a great discrepancy exists in the region between female and male literacy. For example, only 30% of the women in Yemen were literate compared to 67% of the men in 2003. However, literacy rates are not uniform throughout the region. In the United Arab Emirates, the literacy rates were 82% and 76%, respectively. Overall, literacy rates have improved dramatically for women in the region over the last 30 years. Afterward, let's talk about list of oil producing countries, referring to Bahrain, Iraq, United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Qatar, Oman, and Saudi Arabia. Before the oil boom beginning in the 90s, the very small population totals in the lands of Arab Southwest Asia had economies based on low-intensity farming wherever water was available, pastoralism where water and vegetation were scarce, and extensive empty desert areas. A few crops such as dates and citrus fruits were exported from the best watered places in southern Iraq and along the Mediterranean coast. Kuwait, a country with a very small population, had less need or opportunity to invest its huge oil wealth internally, and by the late 1980s, its overseas investments generated more income than oil sales. Such income was the major source of Kuwait rebuilding funds for several years after the destructions caused by the Gulf War of 1991. Iraq's oil production was also reduced by military action during the Gulf War. Meanwhile, by the late 1990s, Kuwait government had largely restored the oil production that was wiped out in the 1990 until 1991. Iraq invasion and occupation, the cost of reconstructions and funding the Gulf War coalitions, however, reduced the country's overseas assets from $100 billion to $35 billion. As the oil output increased, the employment and social welfare conditions of its people improved. The dominance of the ruling Al-Sabah family in both political and economic areas was reduced by an outspoken legislature. They demanded the privatizations of Kuwait Airways and the government oil company. Moving forward with diversification in oil-producing countries, the oil-exporting countries spend a large proportion of their income on food imports, a need that grows as a population increases. Although major investments were made in home-based irrigated agriculture, costs are very high and production is uneconomical compared to world prices. Manufacturing development began with the building of oil refining capacity to replace the direct export of crude oil to European refineries. Petrochemicals and other secondary activities based on the materials produced from oil take advantage of the value added by processing the raw materials. Bahrain and UAE use the local energy source to operate aluminium smelters. Oman built a copper smelter, while Qatar and Saudi Arabia produce steel. Several countries also manufacture construction materials, including cement, to provide the materials for upgrading roads and building new housing and factories. Countries developed food and consumer goods industries. Services also become important in many of these countries, where banking and government employment are increasing rapidly. Since the 1980s, the Gulf countries have tried to decrease their own dependency on oil by investing some of their oil revenues in higher education facilities. For example, a $10 billion endowment was created for King Abdullah University of Science and Technology in Saudi Arabia, and an $8 billion endowment was set up at Sidra Medical and Research Center in Qatar. Many graduates of these growing universities are now employed in banking, education, healthcare, government, and new industries, including the media and information technology. In 2010, Dubai's Internet City marked its 10th anniversary. It now hosts 1,400 companies that include Cisco, Dell, Microsoft, HP, Intel, IBM, General Electric, Oracle, Samsung, Nokia, and RIM, which is BlackBerry, Yahoo, Google, and Symantec. Its success spawned nearby Dubai Media City and Dubai Festival City. This facility, along with the expanding major airport and booming Emirates airline, luxury housing, and high-quality tourist facilities, all signal Dubai's investment in the future. In Saudi Arabia, new industrial towns are being developed at Al Jubail on the Gulf Coast and at Yanbu on the Red Sea. Al Jubail is halfway towards its planned populations of around 300,000 and has major industrial zones with airport, port, and highway linkage. It will cover an area the size of a large US city such as Atlanta. It's Atlanta. In 1981, the Gulf oil countries, except for excluded Iraq, formed the Gulf Cooperation Council (GCC) in the context of the Iran-Iraqi War. It focused on common economic and political interests. Saudi Arabia dominates the organization, which was effective in bringing together other countries to resist the 1990 Iraqi invasion of Kuwait. Here, we're going to talk about 3 economic activities in our producing country. First thing first is airline service activity in aviation industry was located in Dubai International Airport, Dubai. The company that we also known as the famous airlines, which is Emirates Airlines. Familiar, right? I'm sure most of us likely to be one of the stewardess or stewards in their company because of the uniqueness of their culture, the wages, and also how they treat their customers and how good the company itself is. Moreover, Emirates Airlines is the world's largest airline operator in Middle East. Other than that, Emirates connects the world to and through our global hub in Dubai. They operate modern, efficient, and comfortable aircraft, and their culturally diverse workforce delivers award-winning services to their customers across 6 continents every day. One thing for sure that most of you maybe don't know yet, Emirates women's pilots fly to 4 continents for International Women's Day, which is they allowed or hired women's pilots in their company. Fantastic, right? They're also practicing no to single-use plastic, which is to save our planet. The history of this Emirates airline is begin with 1984 from Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, then UAE Minister of Defence and a member of Dubai's progressive royal family, asked Sir Maurice Flanagan, the managing director of Dinata, to look into starting an airline. By December that year, a comprehensive business plan was ready and the name Emirates was chosen for the new airlines. Until 2020, Emirates Airlines already received 56 million passengers flown in 2019 until 2020. They had 270 fleet sizes. They already reached 157 destinations. Most of it is all around the world, I guess. They also had 172 nationalities, and they already hired most of it 59,519 employees as of 31st March 2020. Second, economic activities in oil-producing countries, which is service activities in resort industry, which is located in Egyptian Red Sea coast at the southern tip of the Sinai Peninsula. This company, managed by Sharm el-Sheikh, it is the biggest company for contributing in the evolutions of Egyptian tourism. Sharm el-Sheikh is an Egyptian city on the southern tip of the Sinai Peninsula. On the coastal strip along the Red Sea, its population is approximately 73,000 as of 2015. Sharm el-Sheikh is the administrative hub of Egypt's South Sinai Peninsula Governorate, which includes the smaller coastal towns of Dahab and Nuweiba, as well as the mountainous interior, St. Catherine and Mount Sinai. The city and holiday resort is a significant center for tourism in Egypt, while also attracting many international conferences and diplomatic meetings. Sharm el-Sheikh, also meaning Bay of the Sheikh, is also known as the City of Peace. In Egyptian Arabic, it's called Medina es-Salam, referring to the large number of international peace conferences that have been held there. It was known as Sharm el-Sheikh during Ottoman rule and as Ophira when the area was under Israel control between 1967 and 1982. Among Egyptians and any visitors, the name of the city is commonly shortened to Sham, which is its common name in Egyptian slang. The name is also sometimes written as Sharm el-Sheikh, Sharm el-Sheikh in English. There are a few places to visit in Sharm el-Sheikh that they offer to customers or tourists. First is diving center, second is Ras Mohammed National Park, there is colorful canyon, fourth is desert safari, and last but not least is Mount Sinai and Monastery of St. Catherine. Lastly, the third economic activities in oil-producing countries is mining activity. In petroleum industry, which is located in Dhahran, Saudi Arabia, and was conducted by Saudi Aramco. Saudi Aramco operates the world's largest single hydrocarbon network, the Master Gas System. In additional information regarding Saudi Aramco, they are leading producer of the energy and chemicals that drive global commerce and enhance the daily lives of people around the globe. From their proven upstream capabilities and their strategically integrated global downstream network to their cutting-edge sustainability technologies, they have created an unsurpassed value engine that places us in a category all their own. They also believe in the power of energy to transform lives, enhance communities, advance human progress, and sustain their planet. The products that they offer to customer, which is oil, gas, harnessing the power of chemicals, refined products, retail fuels, and power systems. In Saudi Aramco, there's a term they call shaibah. When it comes to petroleum geology, Saudi Arabia is home to some of the best in the world. Much of this geology is located in remote, inhospitable places, but that hasn't stopped us from meeting those challenges and investing in projects that help meet global energy demand. If you want to know more regarding this company, you can check their website to learn more, to know more information. I'm sure you will receive a lot of knowledge regarding this company, especially in oil producing. Why not, right? Present here is the list of non-or little oil producing countries, referring to Lebanese, Syria, Jordan, and Yemen. Firstly, Syria has small oil deposits in its eastern area that are its major export at present. Failure to find new sources will lead to the end of oil income. Syria also has lands watered by the Euphrates River on which its farmers grow cotton, cereal grains, and fruit. It is not self-sufficient in food, however, after centuries of soil erosion on its northern hills, the slopes are being reseeded to expand local sheep farming. In the 1990s, Syrian markets were open to foreign products, and private enterprise and exports were encouraged. Syria's tourist industry grew in the 1990s with a greater openness to foreign visitors. The interest is particularly in religious and historic sites, and most tourists come from Europe. Next, Jordan, Lebanon, and Yemen continue to have small economies with limited prospects of expansion. When Israel appropriated the West Bank area in 1967, Jordan lost half its agricultural land and much of its water and labor force. Jordan's high debts led to the austerity measures and social unrest. Exports of phosphate, its main source of income, are affected by fluctuating world prices. Attempts to re-establish manufacturing industry around Amman when Israel took the West Bank were not successful. Aid income from all countries supported Jordan as a frontline state, adjoining Israel. After the 1991 Gulf War, Arab countries withdrew their aid. Overseas workers returned home, and a flood of refugees arrived from Iraq. As in Syria, Jordan's tourist industry expanded in the 1990s from 500,000 to 3.7 million visitors in 2008, with special interest in historic sites such as the rock-hewn city of Petra. In 1986, Yemen experienced a political crisis that led to the unification of the two parts of the country in 1990. The discovery of oil in the north gave hopes of an improving future, but renewed internal conflict in 1994 showed that major difficulties still stand in the way of constant efforts to improve the economy. Yemen remains the poorest country in the sub-region and depends on aid from foreign donors. Ini settle. To sum up, the small oil-poor countries of Lebanon, Jordan, and especially Yemen are much less developed. They have more available labor and some capacity for agriculture. Iraq and Syria are the exceptions to this rich-poor duality. Until the mid-1980s, they both had oil revenues, significant water resources and agriculture, and large labor forces. The Iran-Iraq War the Gulf War and the subsequent UN sanctions and the US invasion in 2003, however, almost destroyed Iraq's economy, though it is now rebuilding. Presenting three economic activities in non or little oil producing countries. Firstly, in service activity in tourism industry was located in Sotra, Yemen. The company was conduct this industry is Jubari Travel. Little did we know that Yemen is home to world's oldest skyscraper city. The visions of Jubari Travel is to be one of the leading corporate travel management agencies in Yemen and in the region, and to be unrivaled in the travel industry by continuously developing new relationships and opportunities. Professional customer-oriented consultation providing hassle-free travel. They provide a service which is email capabilities for convenience and prompt booking and informations. Creative but persistent approach to search for the most appropriate travel arrangement and identifying the best possible value. The travel consultants are friendly, professionals and experienced in accommodating both the seasoned travel and those new to the world of travel. They pride ourselves in customer satisfaction. A large percentage of their bookings are from repeat clients, while much of their new business is from word-of-mouth recommendations. Some of service that they provide to customer, which is airline tickets, visa, hotel booking, holidays, Hajj and Umrah, travel insurance, land tickets, and car rental. You can check them out to know more information. Second economic activities in non or little oil producing countries is agriculture activities in farming industry. Was located in Zalka, Lebanon. The company that manage this industry is we call INMA Agriculture SARL. More information regarding this company is contracted to manage farming and agricultural businesses on behalf of small-scale farms up to large-scale agricultural investments. Moreover, INMA Agriculture was established in Beirut, Lebanon in 2013, benefiting from the reputations and wide experience of its shareholders. Their team has been serving and supplying the agricultural sector in Lebanon and the Middle East since 2008. Their company is a consultancy firm that operates in the fields of agribusiness, agriculture productions, and development. Moreover, INMA has established a grid of connections to provide the Lebanese agriculture sector and farmers with their needs, while ensuring a better development for this sector in economical, environmental, and contentable manners. INMA Agriculture is a specialized company that provides material, management, and advisory services to investors and farmers in the agriculture within the MENA region and overseas. Plus, INMA Agriculture has been involved in numerous activities while providing technical services, which lead to its vast range of expertise and diverse team. Their expertise is in land assessment, crop management, including greenhouse design, hydroponic technology, remote irrigation design, implementation and automations, advanced fertilizations, and pest control techniques. To summarize, there's four types of activities that they provide, which is land assessment and reclamations, irrigation systems, fertigations and pest control, and also hydroponic system. Third, economic activities in non or little oil producing countries was including activity in manufacturing industry was located in Zarqa, Jordan. The company that conduct this industry is Noble Apparels Jordan. More information is Nilkamal Group of companies started their operations in 1975 at Dubai as a wholesaler and retail traders in textile goods. Moreover, Noble Apparels Jordan LLC was established in the year 2016. It is situated in the industrial park of Abdulail Zarqa and it's located about 50 km from Amman, the capital of Jordan. The factory is spread over 13,500 square meters and is integrated from raw material warehouse to packing and exporting of goods. The firm is in the business of manufacturing apparels for well-established brands and retailers in the US and EU markets. There's a few types of services or something like brand that they produce, which is Costco, Callaway, Lee & Fung, and the most popular is Walmart. Don't believe it? You can Google it. Next is diversified economy. Diversified economy is internally the income from all enriched the ruling cities and was used partly to generate industrialization, intensify agricultural output, provide more and better roads, airports, health services and education, and increase living standards. Up to one-third of the income in some countries went to purchase military hardware. The oil income made it possible to shift economies toward sustainable development based on oil diversification. A diversified economy is one in which manufactured goods are more important than primary products, and a variety of manufactured products is driven by a growing service sector. For example, the tourism strategy is part of Saudi Arabia's longer-term economic plan, known as Vision 2030, to diversify its economy away from oil, and expanded tourism sector will also provide job opportunities to Saudi youth. Last but not least, we're gonna talk about petrodollars. What is petrodollars? Interesting, right? Usually we're gonna hear petroleums only. Despite that, petrodollars is a dollar's worth of foreign exchange obtained by a petroleum exporting country through sales abroad. To be specified, it's under non-oil wealth. Its oil-producing countries have reaped huge profits from high oil prices in the 2000s. These profits, known as petrodollars, are invested around the world. They accounted for only about 11% of all foreign investments in 1995, but increased to approximately 36% in 2006. Countries of the Gulf Cooperation Council invest about 80% of their assets overseas, which amounted to approximately $2 trillion in foreign investment assets by the end of 2006. In the early 2000s, petrodollars began being invested in real estate in corporations like Procter & Gamble, Hewlett-Packard, PepsiCo, Time Warner, and Disney. The Abu Dhabi Investment Authority invested $7.5 billion in Citigroup after that corporation lost billions of dollars in risky home mortgage to Americans. Such large sums of money have helped to fuel the global economy. For example, by keeping interest rates on loans and credit cards low, it also has allowed Americans to spend lavishly and to go deep into debt, which eventually weakens the US dollar. As the dollar weakens and developing countries continue to grow, petrodollars are being redirected elsewhere, particularly Asia. And in other examples, the most striking feature of the report is that Saudi Arabia, the largest oil exporter from the group, has nearly one-third of the total revenue of OPEC, with earnings of $237 billion in 2018. I think we have reached the end of the slide. I hope you all can learn new knowledge about Northern Africa and Southwestern Asia from the presentation by us. We are sorry if there is a lack of understanding. Do not forget to wear your mask, take care and stay safe. Hashtag kita jaga kita. Thank you so much from me, Nisa and Farzana, to Sir SHAZEER and my fellow classmates. Have a good day everyone. Bye bye. Assalamualaikum.